Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Welcome back to another episode of the Work From Home Show. I'm Naresh Vissa with Adam Schrader, and coming to us live is Julie Kratz. She's the founder and CEO of Next Pivot Point, a highly acclaimed leadership trainer who has led teams and produced results in corporate America for nearly 2 decades. After experiencing her own career pivot point, Julie developed a process to help women leaders create their winning career game plan. Focused on promoting gender equality in the workplace and encouraging women with their what's next moments, Julie is a frequent speaker and executive coach. She's a best-selling author of the new book, Lead Like an Ally, a journey through corporate America with proven strategies to facilitate inclusion. Julie, welcome to the Work From Home Show.
Thanks for having me.
So just read your background and your bio. How about you share just a little bit more about your current company, what you do, but also how this ties into the future of the 9-to-5 job?
Yeah, the 9-to-5 job might be a bit outdated, right? My background, I have spent 12 years myself in corporate America, and then the last 6 on my own in my own business, Next Pivot Point. And through those experiences, really see an opportunity for more inclusive, positive workplace cultures. For example, in my corporate experience, it was very rare that I saw myself reflected in the organization, and being a white woman, it was really remarkable early 2000s to look around and be like, there's nobody like me leading here. And that trend continued, unfortunately, for most of my nearly all my corporate career. I never had the opportunity to work for an organization managed or led by a woman. And now in the work that I do, that continues to be the case. We're still not as inclusive as we could potentially be. And I think we're seeing a lot of the aftermath of that with what's happening in the news today, unfortunately. So it's an interesting, pivotal time. My business has the word pivot point in it, which the pun is not lost on me, that we are at a pivot point culturally, not just to redefine what diversity and inclusion look like in the future of the workplace, but what does the future of the workplace look like? This is really a nice clean slate moment to think about, throw out that old 9-to-5 butt in seat mentality and really think about what works for us. How will future of work best for us?
One of the things, it's obviously a long process to get, not obviously, but it's been a long process to get more women up at the top of companies, just because, you've got the men who've been there forever and you're kind of as they work their way up, you're kind of waiting for them to retire to bring in the new guard. Do you think working from home, do you think it'll kind of get rid of the old boys club attitude as more people are kind of working from home and they're not congregating around the water cooler or, doing that sort of stuff? Or will it provide more of an opportunity for women or groups that have been kind of not given the opportunity as much?
I wish it was that simple. I don't think centuries of inequality and male dominance.
But do you think it will provide a better opportunity, or do you think it's just going to stay the same?
Yeah, I do think it's a clean slate moment. That's what I've been hearing, and I've done quite a bit of work and research on the future of work with some quantitative and qualitative research. So pretty well-informed opinion unanimously from leaders in and out of industries, inside companies and advising companies that say this is an opportunity to really think about what we want our workplace to look like. And I think one of the things that's traditionally happened, like you said, is just this natural kind of old guard, old boys club. It's called a lot of different things inside organizations, but essentially, you know what it looks like. And it's been hard to change things over time. Insert one diverse person or one woman on a team or a board, and it doesn't really work. It doesn't really diversify or change things much. You really do need to have a full slate of diversity across, and that's hard to do over time. So it really takes intentional efforts. But I would say right now for organizations kind of thinking again about what virtual work means, what flexible work means, what all the trends that we know will carry into the future for sure will be, is who do we want to be doing business with? What communities do we want to be engaged with? What do we want our customer base to look like? What do we want our fundraisers to look like? Depending on the business that you're in, think about who are your constituents, and are we mirroring that inside the walls of our organization? Do we look like that? Do we behave like that? Do we have experiences like that of the people that we want to be partnering with? And my guess is maybe on the front lines, there's a lot of data to support. Maybe that's the case, but it certainly is not as you climb up even into middle management, and certainly not in the C-suite or on boards. And that's a big miss for organizations that want to have a legacy and want to be viable into the future. I truly don't believe you can exist long term if you're not in touch with your customer base at the top of your organization. And so mirroring effect, this can be used as an opportunity to kind of reset and pivot that forward and think about, what do we want to look like? How can we intentionally make steps to do that? And I think the reason it hasn't happened, like you said, it's just been kind of a one step, two step kind of thing, a lot of baby steps. Feels like a complete overhaul. But what I know from my research on allies in the workplace and engaging men as allies, engaging white allies, a lot of different types of people that can be there for people that are different than themselves. If we engage the highest level of an organization, if they're engaged and truly believe in the benefits of inclusion and having an inclusive workplace where all people feel seen, heard, and belong, and we're mirroring who we want to do business with, those organizations just achieve more. And you don't have to look too far for great success examples of the sales forces of the world. And no one's perfect, but there are a lot of organizations that are doing this, that are doing really well right now, and they're being tested with some adverse times. And those that weather the storm generally are diverse and inclusive organizations. It happened in 2008. I suspect it'll happen again with this recession. So this is a great opportunity to again, reset, think intentionally about the future.
Yeah, I like how you said you have to think about it over time, because I remember I was watching an interview with Stephen Colbert a couple years ago where he was talking about his writer staff and how he would read the work and he looked at the name and race a little bit, but didn't focus on it. But then he realized after everybody was hired, he looked at it and said, oh, wow, like my staff is all white. Like they write like I did, so I chose them, and I didn't focus on getting outside viewpoints. And so it really does, like you said, it has to be intentional whenever you're doing that. So I do like how you said, I mean, it's got to be a company-wide policy that goes for years. You can't just say, we're going to do it in June, we're going to become inclusive. So.
Yeah, but you can't draw a line in the sand and say these are the behaviors we expect.
Yeah, you say starting June.
Right.
Become inclusive.
And these, by the way, here's the tools here. Like, you can't just put it on everybody. Like, do these things, be more diverse and inclusive. That is, people don't know what that means, right? You have to define it. You have to set expectations to it, just like you would any other cultural shift.
Now, talking again about work from home, what recommendations or advice do you have for companies so that they can help their employees shift to work from home?
Yeah, I think that's really on people's minds right now. I'm not a big fan of policies. Maybe that's why I didn't stay in corporate America too long. But I think now more than ever, employees aren't asking for a policy of what do I do and what I can't do, but they want to know the expectations. So again, it all goes back to painting a clear picture of what are the expectations. How do we expect you to communicate when you're working from home? How often do you need to be on your computer at home? Those types of things people worry about. If they don't know the expectation, they create an expectation in their mind that may not at all be the reality. So just being crystal clear on things like availability, things like communication expectations, and modeling that as senior leaders. Rarely do you need to create a 20-page lengthy document of all the restrictions and protocols that people don't respond to that. They don't get excited about that rarely. What they do get engaged with is being listened to and being checked in on and having transparent communication. So as we learn something as an organization, you will be the first to know when it's appropriate for you to know. And trust us, we have your best interests at heart as leaders, being clear and open and providing meaningful feedback. One of the things I love as we've migrated to this virtual work environment is just micro communications. And not everybody likes an email in their inbox every day, but most people are going to want over communication versus under communication. And I love that CEOs are, releasing statements or blurbs or short videos describing what they're seeing in the business, so people aren't left to worry, create their own version of the story. And I love small pulse surveys that organizations are doing to get real-time collective feedback on what's working for you at home, what's not working for you at home, what communication do you want more from us, what do you want less from us. Those types of real-time feedback captures and transparent communications really go a long way to set up the work from home virtual environment to be successful, because we've had this technology for years. It's not a surprise that we could work from home. I think we're just realizing, wow, we could do it a lot better than we thought we could. And maybe we were creating some barriers for it that weren't very real. And now we're seeing how helpful it can be. But by no means will it be 100% virtual in the future, right? There are obviously jobs that have to be done, essential work that has to be done face to face, and there will still be a blended work environment in the future where, a few days in, a few days out seems to be the model that most organizations are going to be modeling in the future, unless, again, you're in a critical collaboration department. But I think we know that as long as you set, again, these expectations, these clear expectations, and have trust and healthy communication as an organization and have inclusion, I will tell you, those that had inclusion before, were measuring it and focused on it, are really outperforming their peers. And the data has shown that over time for the business case. But now we're really seeing the benefits of that. So it comes down to, again, those clear expectations, transparent communication, and in really building trust with your team.
Let's take, for example, companies that make $10 million in gross revenue or more. Do you think it's a good investment for those companies to provide, let's say, a work from home stipend to employees? And I ask this because I've been working from home going all the way back to when I was in college, when it was working from dorm. So really all you need, in my opinion, is a good laptop. You don't even need a PC, a good laptop, a smartphone, an internet connection, maybe an iPad. It's not completely required, but it depends on the job function. And that's about it. And most people have these things already. They already have them personally. So what are your thoughts on something like a work from home stipend? Because not all businesses can afford it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's very much meet your employees where they're at. You have to know the socioeconomics of your employees. For those that, make less than, $30,000, $40,000 a year to support their family, they may not be able to afford the high-speed internet option, for example, or they may not have a home office or even private space to work from. So we're really starting to see a divide of those with privilege and those without during this pandemic. I think meeting your employees where they're at and thinking about what resources do they need to make this successful. And if you have kind of a key checklist, much like you just went through, right? High-speed internet, a workspace that's, has some good ergonomics to it and some privacy to it, headphones, microphone, those types of things, even just having a checklist and asking your employees, what do they have and what do they need? I think just asking rather than supplying it without knowing if they need those things. And certainly, we know that 75% of organizations are reevaluating their office space right now and renegotiating their leases or thinking about not renewing them or not renewing them fully next year. So there's some money that's going to be saved in real estate. And I think it's a great idea to think, hey, we're going to save some money, so we want to give it back to our employees and make sure that you have the right working conditions in your chosen workspace. Another great offering that I'm seeing is when we do, feel safe being physically around each other again, is co-working spaces. Will really have been on the rise for many years, but maybe giving your employees access or a paid membership to a local co-working space or a stipend for that might be a great workaround option than having to give them all the equipment to do it from home, especially if they don't have a private workspace in their home environment. So all of these things, I think having some agility and being responsive and asking employees and co-creating a solution that works for them can be a much better solution than a blanket solution of, $1,000 per employee, and that's all you get. Maybe some employees like me would be like, well, like you too. I've been working from home for 10 years. I'm good. I don't need anything. But others might really, really need a lot of support to make that work. So just knowing not everybody's the same. It's not a one size fits all approach.
You were talking about, as a company, coming up with a plan for the workers and getting that all set up. Now, a lot of these employers, they're middle-aged to older business owners, and they don't know what to do with this because they've never worked from home. They've never had employees work from home. What is your advice to those employers who are having people work from home? How do you go about setting up a strategy for that?
Yeah, this is really net new for a lot of organizations. I think back to my manufacturing days and the on-site workplaces that really aren't used to working remotely. The more new you are, the bigger the learning curve, and the more you need to really keep an active touch point on your employees to see how they're doing. The biggest thing I can recommend that a lot of great leaders have been doing over these last few months and into the future, let's keep doing it, is checking in with employees and asking them how they're doing. And legitimately asking the question from a place of care and listening to their response. Not just saying, hey, how you doing today? It's like, oh, how are you doing? Let's check in. How are you? I want to know how you're doing. Give me a sense of where you're at. So for those new to this virtual work environment or leading in a virtual work environment, and I think too, one of the things that I hear often from successful leaders is I try to find different ways to communicate with my team. And, this is one of the biggest challenges is we've got Slack channels, we've got email, text, video calls, Zoom, so many options, Skype. Finding a method that works for the individual, meeting them where they're at. And some people want to hear from me every day. Some people want to touch base for a half an hour once a week. Everybody's a little different. So I'm going to lean on them to tell me what their communication expectations are, when they need me, and proactively schedule that time or remind myself to do those check-ins. But what I don't want to do is check in with them too much and micromanage and hover and signal that I don't really trust them to get their work done, or question if they don't respond to an email within an hour. But I want to instill trust in that communication and be there proactively instead of reacting on the other end. So I think for this whole work from home virtual environment, finding systems, finding processes that work, that much like the Cube drive-by kind of, hey, how's it going? That can still happen in a virtual work environment. I think we're just thinking about it too much as it's totally different, because it is different. But in a lot of ways, it's still the same. It's communication. It's words that can be shared over a phone or a device instead of words shared, live in that cubicle environment. So yes, it is different, but I think we probably magnified the differences rather than looked at the similarities.
Okay, so do you think employers, everybody has that elusive, yearly, review, job check-in that, I've found whenever I was in corporate America, it never really happened. Do you think we're just going to have to actually, as employers, focus in on doing that, but maybe doing it monthly or quarterly to really focus in and say, how's your job progression going? How's your work looking, and all of that, and kind of doing you were talking about kind of doing an informal thing, but would it be helpful, do you think, to have kind of a more formal monthly or quarterly job review almost?
Yeah, I mean, performance management, again, just like the 9 to 5, a bit outdated, the annual performance review. I can't tell you. I mean, my own corporate experience, much like yours, you were lucky to get one, and if you did, it wasn't good. It wasn't a good experience, even if you did well.
Yeah, the only time you usually had a job review is when they said, you're not doing your job, and you can pack your stuff up and leave.
Right. And you, even if you were, you're scared that's what's going to happen. I remember my first one, like, oh boy, I'm in trouble, and it was good. But you should be having those conversations every day, every week with your employees at a minimum. No one should have to wait till their annual performance review to know how they're doing. So I think they were constructed to make sure people were having performance reviews regularly and hearing about their performance. But it's outdated. We have much better mechanisms to share information. What I'm seeing in the future, and this isn't revolutionary, is key performance indicators, right? And even for roles that are hard to quantify, you can still take a look at leading indicators. What is it going to be successful in that position? If you're in a sales role, sales dollars, number of outbound conversations, new prospects. If you're in a marketing role, number of new campaigns, number of new impressions, whatever it is that you can measure, having key performance indicators that are leading, that are proactive, again, not reactive, and measuring work that way instead, right? Gone are the days of kind of measuring things, having 3 goals for the year, and then marching in that same direction, even if the world changes, much like it recently did. And then we have to revisit all the goals. I mean, I've never seen an organization that got their goals together before the end of the first quarter. Into the first quarter, you don't have goals. And then the second quarter, you're rolling out the goals. And then by the fourth quarter, you've only had a little while to work on the goals. There's just so much missed opportunity there. What if instead we just decided these are the things that are going to show us we're being successful, these are the activities, and this is how we're going to measure them. And if they're in front of us all the time, great. If we capture them once a month, great. But we're at least having a conversation pretty regularly so that performance review or annual review isn't a surprise.
Now, Julie, why would a company want to go back to the office and have employees physically work under their nose?
Yeah, I've heard interesting stories in my research. Someone shared, and I think this is somewhat of a generational thing, but I will say the research that I did on the future of work, and the average age was in their 40s, said positive workplace culture was the most important thing in returning to work, and even more so than pay and benefits. And they enjoyed the virtual work environment. But I do think there's this stigma of the past, especially with the baby boomer generation, that was designed the workplace to be much like the military, where it was like, go to work, put your head down, chain of command, got to see somebody to know they're working. All these old workplace mantras that just existed for so much of that generation's workplace life, that it's really being upended right now, and very swiftly and very quickly. So I don't think it's welcomed. I'm hearing organizations say, as soon as the government, local government are saying it's safe to return, you will be expected to return, but we'll be social distancing, so we'll still be meeting on conference calls even if we're in the office. And the reaction I'm hearing from employees is, well, don't you trust me? I was getting my work done before. Why do I need to come into the office to still do a conference call on the phone with people that are 6 feet away from me? Just a little weird. And so the better approach to this that many organizations are taking, and Twitter's leading the way on this, many other companies are following suit, to say, we're not in a rush. We're not going to require you to come back into the office. We're not in a rush to do it. We'll return to the office when it's safe, but you can work from home indefinitely, as long as your role, and this is where you have to have expectations and maybe some parameters, because not every role can do that 100% of the time. So have some clear guidance on that. But as long as A, B, and C is clear for your role, you can keep this virtual work environment if that's what you want and that's what's working for you. Have a conversation with your manager. I think personally, giving people the freedom of choice of where they want to work in the future is great, because if you don't give them that choice, there's going to be another organization that's going to be willing to give them that choice. So you might be thinking unemployment's high right now, but it's not going to stay that way forever. And people will remember the actions taken by organizations today, and that those that are leading with trust and not taking opportunistic layoffs and are empowering, engaging their people now, those are the ones that are going to be built to last.
So I want to go back to the inclusion conversation we had just a little bit earlier. And as a business owner, and especially in today's day and age, should you be looking, whenever you talk about inclusion, are you talking about kind of making your structure look more towards society and having kind of going and having a differentiation that way? Or is it looking more like your customer? Like if your customer is 95% women, let's say, should you be looking to have like a 95% female kind of executive roles? Or is it kind of you just need some of every gender and race? And what does inclusion mean?
Yeah, I think I try to steer away from like, we want to be this percentage of gender or race, Yeah. You gotta, because then I like encourages an affirmative action conversation, which there's lots of mixed data on.
Yeah. But should you be focusing more on like pulling in society at large, or should you be focusing in on having people similar to your customer base?
Yeah, I mean, I think thinking about your customer base, and to your point, I mean, there's some industries that 80% of the consumers are women. There's actually quite a few, healthcare, financial services, for example, big part of their customer base. I'm not saying 80% of your employees should be that way. Obviously, 50% of the population, so that's a bit of a guess, or a bit of a leap there. But I do think making sure you're representing that effectively, especially at the top of the organization, and because most organizations, just one or two of 10 or 15, and so that's certainly a gap. So thinking about who do I want to do business with? Do I have a substantial amount of that talent embedded in every layer of my organization? Looking at it that way versus a numbers game. And usually the data shows us we lose people of color and we lose women at that middle band as early on as that director, frontline manager role tends to start to become like 2/3 white male. And then that just continues up through the organization. I think rather than focus on percentages, have intentional goals about we want to increase our recruiting efforts. We want to increase our retention efforts. We want to increase diversify who we're promoting, for example. Those are better goals to set than striving to get them up to the top, because we still want to have like the yin yang effect across genders and races. The beauty of diversity is when you have a healthy amount of diversity across gender, race, religion, you name all the different dimensions of diversity, it goes beyond that. But you get a really nice benefit of having all parties at the table. So we never want to get to a position where it's just all of one demographic, even if your customer base that looks that way. But at a minimum, I think, like you said, society representing culture throughout the organization is a fair ask. We just probably don't want to set specific goals or mandates around that, because it creates this zero-sum game mentality of, oh, we're just promoting women because we have to for that goal, therefore men are being demoted. And that leads to a big risk of a backlash behavior that's not going to be good for the organization.
Great. Well, Julie Kratz, you're the founder and CEO of Next Pivot Point, best-selling author of the new book, Lead Like an Ally, A Journey Through Corporate America with Proven Strategies to Facilitate Inclusion. You're a highly acclaimed leadership trainer all around the world for corporate America, been doing it for a few decades now. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with our listeners?
I really appreciate the time and the due diligence with the questions. I think about your organization. Think about, I'd like to call everyone can be an ally in this conversation. Think about your role in that. And it doesn't matter if you have manager or leader in your title, you can lead from where you're at. How can you influence the organization to be more of what you want it to be in the future? How can you be an ally for others that are different than you? How can you be helpful and be a part of the solution versus the problem, and use this as an opportunity to co-create a future of work that works for you. So I'd encourage your listeners to do that. And I have tons of resources on my website that are complimentary around this subject: videos, blogs, workbooks on the future of work and diversity and inclusion. So be sure to check that out at nextpivotpoint.com.
Great. So that's nextpivotpoint.com, nextpivotpoint.com. It's spelled just like it sounds. Julie Kratz, thanks so much for joining us on the Work From Home Show. To all our listeners out there, visit us at www.workfromhomeshow.com. That's workfromhomeshow.com. If you have any questions for us, hello@workfromhomeshow.com. That's hello@workfromhomeshow.com. You can reach out to Julie through that email address as well. We'll make sure that she gets it. And until next time, keep on working from home.